Have you ever noticed how the moment you finally stop trying to force something, whether a relationship, a dream, or a fear, the whole universe seems to shift, almost as if responding to your surrender? It's as if life itself listens when you let go, and suddenly doors open where walls once stood. Letting go is often misunderstood as a passive act, as if it were a form of giving up or emotional withdrawal. But in truth, letting go is one of the most profound movements of the psyche, one that signals the beginning of a deeper transformation. It marks a pivotal moment in the soul's journey toward individuation, the gradual process by which a person becomes whole by integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the self. To let go is not to lose, but to return to a more authentic relationship with life. It is the act of releasing the ego's demand to control, dominate, or force outcomes in order to make space for what the deeper self truly seeks. The ego is concerned with security, with certainty, with the illusion of mastery. It is the voice that says, "I must hold on," even when something is already breaking apart. But the soul does not operate according to the ego's timetable. It speaks in symbols, emotions, and subtle insights that arise from a deeper layer of being. When something no longer serves the growth of the soul, whether a relationship, belief, identity, or life path, there is often an inner tension that begins to grow. At first, it is quiet, like a whisper from within. Over time, it becomes a psychological weight, a symptom, a repeated pattern, or a deep fatigue of the spirit. These signals are not accidents. They are the unconscious calling the conscious mind to release its grip and step into a more honest engagement with reality. The act of letting go is a choice that involves tremendous inner courage. It requires one to face uncertainty without the usual crutches of control and predictability. It is the crossing of an invisible threshold where the individual no longer clings to the familiar simply because it is known. It is not about detachment from life, but about releasing false attachments. This letting go is not reckless abandonment, but a conscious act of surrender to the deeper wisdom of the psyche. The individual who chooses this path begins to act not from the compulsion of the ego, but from the subtle guidance of the self, the inner center that seeks wholeness and integration above all. Letting go initiates a descent. It often feels like a fall into darkness or emptiness, because the structures that once gave identity are being dismantled. This descent is symbolic of the death of old forms. In mythology and dreams, it is portrayed as a journey into the underworld, a time of wandering in the dark, facing unknown forces. But it is precisely in this state of surrender that transformation becomes possible. The energy that was once tied up in holding things together begins to move inward, reorganizing itself around a deeper truth. The soul, freed from the demands of artificial control, begins to reveal its authentic desires, longings, and directions. To let go is to trust that what is essential will remain or return, and that what departs was never truly part of one's deeper destiny. It is a way of clearing psychic space for the new to emerge. The psyche, when allowed to breathe freely, has a remarkable ability to guide the individual through inner symbols, dreams, and intuitive knowing. But these inner signals can only be heard when the noise of resistance has quieted. Letting go clears the clutter of the psyche and allows something meaningful to take shape in the void left behind. This process often brings about a shift in the relationship between the conscious mind and the unconscious. Where once there was conflict or suppression, there now emerges a dialogue, a growing sense that the self is not fragmented, but part of a larger, more mysterious order. The person begins to live with more openness, more willingness to accept not knowing, and more capacity to live in the flow of becoming, rather than the illusion of static control. Letting go is therefore not a one-time act, but an ongoing attitude, a posture of inner listening and trust that allows life to unfold, not from the will of the ego, but from the deep intelligence of the soul. When the conscious mind begins to release its rigid attachment to control, the unconscious does not remain silent. Instead, it often rises, quietly but powerfully, offering symbolic insight, inner shifts, and subtle guidance that reflect a deeper intelligence at work. This is the nature of the psyche. It contains not only the known but the unknown, not only the visible patterns of personality, but the hidden forces that shape our behavior, emotions, and perception of the world. The unconscious, long kept in shadow by the ego's dominance, responds to the act of letting go with a kind of awakening. As the conscious ego relinquishes its grip, psychic energy that was once blocked begins to flow more freely, inviting transformation through unexpected forms. The relationship between the conscious and unconscious mind is delicate. For much of life, the ego tries to assert control, attempting to manage outcomes, suppress doubts, and override discomfort. Yet the unconscious operates by a different logic. It speaks not through reason, but through symbols, feelings, and dreams. When the ego lets go, whether through loss, surrender, or a moment of clarity, it creates an opening through which the unconscious can enter conscious life. This is not a loss of control, but the emergence of a new kind of guidance. The psyche, when given room, often brings forward material that points the way toward integration and healing. It might come through a dream image, a sudden insight, a mysterious coincidence, or a shift in emotional tone. These expressions are not random. They are the language of the deeper self, responding to the release of conscious resistance. Letting go initiates a psychological reordering. The energy that was previously tied up in maintaining control begins to redistribute itself throughout the psyche. In doing so, unconscious contents rise to the surface, not to overwhelm the ego, but to bring balance. The unconscious is not merely a repository of forgotten or repressed material, it also contains the potential for renewal, creativity, and self-discovery. When the mind stops forcing solutions, new images and insights often arise spontaneously. These inner movements are the soul's way of indicating that it is responding to the shift. The psyche senses the loosening of boundaries and begins to participate in the transformation. This is why many individuals, after finally surrendering a long-held attachment, often experience a period of heightened awareness or intuition. They report sudden clarity, powerful dreams, or meaningful coincidences that feel too precise to be accidental. These phenomena are not hallucinations, nor are they products of wishful thinking. They represent the unconscious asserting its voice after being silent for so long. The more authentically one lets go, the more space the psyche has to speak. The unconscious does not push its way forward, it waits for the ego to step aside. And when it does, the deeper self begins to move into alignment, offering insight and direction in subtle but unmistakable ways. One of the most profound expressions of the unconscious during this time is through dreams. When control is relinquished, dreams often become vivid, archetypal, and emotionally resonant. The psyche uses these images to communicate its state, to guide the conscious mind toward unresolved issues, or to point toward future potential. A dream of falling, flying, or standing before a door may carry more meaning than any rational analysis. These symbols are the unconscious responding to the act of surrender with direction, depth, and a sense of inner coherence. They are not messages from outside, but from within, the deeper knowing that lies beneath the surface of awareness. Another way the unconscious responds is through synchronicity, those moments when external events seem to reflect inner states in uncanny ways. After letting go of a relationship, a person might unexpectedly run into someone who offers wisdom or comfort. After giving up a rigid goal, a new opportunity may arise that better aligns with the soul's deeper needs. These are not logical outcomes. They are reflections of an inner shift that calls forth outer change. When the conscious mind no longer interferes with forceful intention, the unconscious seems to invite patterns of meaning to emerge. The world responds not with chaos, but with resonance. Letting go is not a collapse of order, but the beginning of a new kind of harmony between the conscious and unconscious. The psyche, long constrained by the ego's insistence on control, begins to express its own rhythm, its own timing, its own symbolic language. In that space, where will yields to wisdom and control gives way to trust, the universe, reflected through the depths of the unconscious, begins to answer with guidance that cannot be summoned by force, only revealed through surrender. When an individual truly lets go, releasing control, expectation, and resistance, there often arises a remarkable phenomenon known as synchronicity. This is more than mere coincidence. It is a meaningful connection between inner states and outer events that defies explanation by cause and effect alone. Synchronicity speaks to a hidden order in the universe, a subtle dialogue between the psyche and the cosmos that unfolds when one's inner world aligns with larger, mysterious forces. It is as if the universe itself responds to the soul's surrender by arranging events and signs that carry profound significance, guiding the individual toward a deeper understanding or a new path. The experience of synchronicity is one that has long fascinated those who explore the depths of the psyche and the nature of reality. It reveals that life is not a random sequence of unrelated moments, but a woven tapestry where inner meaning and outer reality resonate with each other. When the ego relinquishes its tight hold and the mind becomes open, the boundary between inner experience and external circumstance begins to blur. Suddenly, events take on a symbolic quality. Numbers, encounters, phrases, or images appear repeatedly or in unexpected ways, creating a sense that life is speaking in a language beyond words. These moments are not accidental. They are responses from a universe that is attuned to the subtle shifts in the individual's soul. Synchronicity can be understood as the psyche's way of communicating with the individual at moments of transition. When someone lets go of old attachments or beliefs, they enter a liminal space, an in-between state where old structures have dissolved but new forms have not yet taken shape. In this threshold, the universe seems to provide signs and symbols that offer reassurance, direction, or challenge. These meaningful coincidences function as markers along the path, signaling that the individual is on a journey that has both personal and cosmic significance. They encourage trust in the process, reminding the soul that it is part of a greater order, even when the way forward is unclear. This mysterious connection between inner and outer events is not limited to a particular culture or belief system. It is a universal phenomenon that speaks to the fundamental unity of existence. People across time and tradition have reported experiencing moments when the timing of an event or the appearance of a symbol felt too precise to be random. These experiences often bring a deep sense of awe, wonder, or profound insight. They suggest that when the ego steps aside and the soul opens itself to the unknown, the universe responds in kind. offering a kind of cosmic conversation that transcends ordinary understanding. What makes synchronicity so compelling is that it emerges most clearly when one is in a state of surrender. The act of letting go creates an openness, a receptive space within the psyche, where the ordinary boundaries between self and other, inside and outside, begin to dissolve. In this state, the universe no longer appears as an external force to be controlled or feared, but as a living, responsive presence that reflects the deeper movements of the soul. The individual senses that their life is not simply shaped by cause and effect, but also by meaningful patterns that reveal a profound interconnectedness with all that exists. Synchronicities often serve as turning points in a person's life. They may coincide with moments of decision, insight, or transformation. For example, encountering a stranger who imparts an unexpected piece of wisdom just when it is most needed, or coming across a book, song, or image that perfectly expresses an inner struggle. These events are like guideposts, providing direction when the path ahead seems uncertain. They carry the message that surrendering control does not mean being abandoned by life, but rather being embraced by a deeper intelligence that orchestrates events in subtle, meaningful ways. The experience of synchronicity also challenges the modern, mechanistic worldview that sees the universe as purely random and impersonal. Instead, it invites a more holistic perspective, one that acknowledges the psyche as an active participant in the unfolding of reality. It suggests that our inner states, intentions, and openness influence the fabric of life itself. When we let go of the need to control and open ourselves to the unknown, the universe responds with a mysterious dance of signs and events that help us navigate the unseen realms of meaning. In this light, letting go is not simply a psychological act, but a profound alignment with the cosmos. It is an invitation to move beyond fear and fragmentation into a relationship with life that is fluid, dynamic, and deeply interconnected. Synchronicity serves as a reminder that the universe is alive with meaning, and that our soul's surrender is met with a response that is both intimate and expansive. A response that guides us toward greater wholeness, purpose, and understanding. When the act of letting go takes place, it often brings the individual into a space that can feel like emptiness or void, a psychological and existential space where familiar anchors and identities seem to dissolve. This experience is not merely about losing something, it is about entering a profound transformation that is often likened to a symbolic death. Just as physical death represents the final letting go of the body, this inner descent involves surrendering old ways of being, outdated beliefs, and egoic attachments. The void that appears in this process can feel terrifying or disorienting because it strips away the structures that once provided safety and certainty. Yet this passage through emptiness is necessary for the renewal and rebirth of the psyche to occur. This symbolic death is an essential part of the soul's journey toward wholeness. It resembles a night of darkness before the dawn, an inner crucible where the ego's old patterns dissolve so that something new can emerge. The void, far from being a mere absence, is a fertile ground for transformation. It is in this emptiness that the psyche is given room to reorganize itself. Freed from the constraints of habitual thought and conditioned identity, the process is not linear or easy. It involves grappling with loss, fear, and uncertainty. Yet it is precisely through this struggle with the void that the soul discovers its true depth and resilience. In myth and symbolism, this journey through the void is often represented by a descent into the underworld, a passage through darkness, or a confrontation with death itself. These images are archetypal. They reflect universal patterns that live within the collective unconscious and manifest in personal experience. The underworld is not a place of eternal punishment, but a realm of transformation, where the old self is stripped away to reveal the deeper self. In psychological terms, it is the confrontation with the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we deny, reject, or fail to understand. Facing the void means facing these hidden aspects, acknowledging pain and brokenness, and allowing the psyche to integrate what was previously fragmented. During this time, the individual may feel a sense of disorientation or alienation, as if cut off from the familiar sources of meaning. This is a natural stage in the process. The ego, accustomed to certainty and control, resists the dissolution of its boundaries. Yet the surrender to the void is necessary because it clears the way for the emergence of new insights, creativity, and spiritual growth. The emptiness holds potential rather than mere loss. It is like a seed buried in dark soil, waiting for the conditions to sprout and grow. The soul's passage through the void is an essential part of the transformative cycle of death and rebirth that underpins psychological and spiritual development. The void also acts as a mirror to the infinite. When the ego lets go of its narrow identity, it begins to touch something timeless and boundless within. This encounter with the infinite can be overwhelming, but is also profoundly liberating. It reveals that beneath the surface of our transient experiences lies a deeper reality that is eternal and unchanging. The symbolic death, experienced in letting go, opens the door to this experience, allowing the individual to move beyond limited self-conceptions and glimpse the interconnectedness of all life. The void, thus, becomes a gateway rather than an end, a threshold through which the soul passes on its way to renewal. Psychologically, this process strengthens the individual's capacity for resilience and wholeness. By confronting the void, one learns to hold paradox and uncertainty without collapsing. The ego learns that it need not cling desperately to control in order to survive. Instead, it can trust in the unfolding of life's mysteries, supported by the wisdom of the unconscious. This trust is not blind faith, but an embodied knowing, born of direct experience. The void teaches that transformation often requires surrendering to what cannot be controlled, and that growth emerges from this surrender. In many spiritual traditions and psychological practices, the passage through the void is seen as a rite of passage. It marks the transition from an old way of being into a new phase of life, characterized by greater self-awareness, compassion, and integration. The void is not a place to fear, but a crucible in which the soul is purified and prepared for its next stage. It is a necessary step in the journey toward wholeness, reminding us that letting go involves more than simply releasing the past. It involves moving through a profound process of inner death and rebirth. In this light, the experience of the void is transformative rather than destructive. It calls the individual to face the deepest parts of the psyche, to confront fear and uncertainty, and to emerge on the other side renewed. Letting go, therefore, is not a passive act of loss, but an active passage through a sacred space where the soul is reshaped and new life begins. When one reaches the point of genuine letting go, it often marks the beginning of a profound process of renewal and rebirth within the psyche. This process is not immediate or superficial. It unfolds gradually and deeply, revealing a transformation that touches every layer of the individual's being. Renewal after letting go is the soul's way of reclaiming its wholeness, moving beyond fragmentation and past attachments toward a new state of integration and vitality. It is the flowering of inner life that had been stifled by resistance, fear, or clinging to the known. The rebirth that follows letting go is both an ending and a beginning, a closure of old chapters and the emergence of fresh possibilities. This renewal is deeply connected to the psyche's natural tendency toward growth and balance. Even in the face of loss or upheaval, the unconscious holds an inherent drive toward healing and restoration. When the ego steps aside and ceases its struggle for control, the unconscious can work more freely, bringing forth new energies and potential. The psyche begins to reorient itself, integrating the lessons learned through suffering or surrender, and synthesizing fragmented parts into a more cohesive whole. This integration is not a mere return to the previous state, but a transformation into something richer, more flexible, and more alive. One of the key aspects of this renewal is the emergence of a more authentic self. Letting go often strips away the false identities and roles that were once held tightly, identities formed by societal expectations, past traumas, or defensive mechanisms. The rebirth allows the individual to encounter a deeper core of being, often described as the self in its truest sense, beyond egoic masks. This authentic self carries a clarity and a sense of purpose that is grounded in inner truth rather than external validation. It is a self that embraces paradox, uncertainty, and complexity, moving beyond simplistic notions of control or certainty. This process of rebirth also involves a renewed capacity for creativity and spontaneity. When the psyche is no longer burdened by rigid attachments or fears, it can open to new ways of experiencing life. Creativity here is not limited to artistic expression. It includes the ability to respond to life with fresh eyes, to discover new paths, and to engage with the world from a place of openness and curiosity. This creative energy is a sign that the soul is alive and thriving, able to co-create its existence rather than merely reacting to circumstances. Renewal after letting go often brings a profound sense of inner peace and resilience. This peace is not a superficial calm, but a deep, abiding trust in the unfolding of life. It arises from the recognition that surrendering control does not mean being powerless, but rather connecting to a greater source of wisdom and strength. The individual learns to navigate life's challenges with a grounded presence, able to withstand uncertainty without losing connection to self or purpose. This resilience is a fruit of the transformation, born from the trials of letting go and the subsequent growth. Importantly, this rebirth is also marked by a renewed sense of connection, not only to oneself, but to the larger world and to the mystery that underlies existence. When the ego relinquishes its isolationist stance, the individual begins to sense their place within a vast interconnected whole. This connection can manifest as a feeling of unity with nature, with other people, or with a spiritual dimension. It reflects the soul's return to wholeness, where boundaries between self and other soften, and a sense of belonging emerges. This is not dependence, but a profound interdependence, a recognition that life flows in relational patterns that include both the visible and invisible. This rebirth is often experienced as a call to new purpose or meaning. The person who has let go of what no longer serves them is often drawn toward paths that resonate with their deeper values and inner guidance. This might involve changes in relationships, career, life, or spiritual practice. These new directions are not random, but emerge organically from the renewed connection with the authentic self. They represent the soul's impulse to express its truth and to live in alignment with its highest potential. The transformation that follows letting go also expands one's capacity for compassion and empathy. Having faced the depths of loss, uncertainty, and renewal, the individual often develops a greater understanding of suffering, both their own and that of others. This compassion arises naturally from lived experience, creating a foundation for healing relationships and meaningful connection. It is a sign that the rebirth is not merely personal but relational, extending its benefits beyond the self. Ultimately, the renewal after letting go reveals that life is cyclical and dynamic. It reminds us that every ending contains the seed of a new beginning, and that surrendering to the flow of life opens us to the continuous process of becoming. This rebirth is the soul's way of affirming its resilience, creativity, and deep capacity for transformation. It is the profound answer that the universe offers when we decide to let go, not as a loss, but as an invitation to live more fully, more authentically, and more connected to the mystery and wonder of existence. Letting go is not an act of weakness, but a courageous step into the unknown, a profound invitation for transformation that awakens the deeper layers of our being. When control is released, the unconscious mind stirs, offering guidance in symbols and dreams. The universe responds through meaningful coincidences, showing us that life is woven with hidden connections. In surrender, we encounter the void, not as emptiness, but as fertile ground for renewal. From this sacred space, the soul is reborn, emerging with greater authenticity, creativity, and resilience. Ultimately, letting go aligns us with a deeper order, a cosmic intelligence that supports our growth and leads us to wholeness. In that sacred surrender, we find not loss, but the beginning of a more vibrant, meaningful existence.